What's happening, Warriors? This is Lebanon, aka War for 120, coming at it and let you know, guys, we're here for our first review of the show Warheart TV, and we have actually picked a recent release that happened in the past few days by the band Lost Dreams. You can see the artwork up here in the top left-hand corner. We are going to have links to the band's YouTube page in the comment section below, so that way you're able to actually find it, as well as a clip to anything we actually can show you as far as that goes. We think we want to be able to help you to actually expand your horizons or whatnot, and so you will see bands on here like this that you probably have never heard of before, and that's totally the point, so that way you can learn more and be able to experience new things in the metal community. Exhale this is the fourth album, I believe, from Lost Dreams, which is an Austrian band and of the melodic death metal variety. They're of that kind of subgenre of death metal where they're able to still have sing-along moments in their songs to a certain extent. We see this in certain other bands where you'll see things, elements of this in bands like Children of Bodom, where you'll see certain bits of certain songs that are sing-along based. Not so much as you would see like an Iron Maiden album, obviously, which is, power metal. But we don't see that quite as much, but at the same time, we still actually see this a lot more in melodic death metal than you do in just death metal, where it's just, death metal, you're lucky if you can understand 3 words in some songs, which is mostly a joke. But, Lost Dreams, this is very much a coming into their own kind of album. And, we can see it from the artwork on this album box. You see like there's some kind of pain going on as far as that goes, kind of a release of what that is. And a lot of the names of these tracks really get going right from the get-go and get you kind of feeling that kind of awkward, kind of what are we experiencing kind of vibe. And this album is definitely an experience from the start of the album. We're getting ready to play the actual opening to the initial track, which is Ego. And as you can hear from that right there, guys, with Ego on there, that song, it just starts out really just aggressive and raw and guttural, and really goes for it. Gets you kind of in that kind of feeling mood, like you're experiencing something a little bit different than maybe you may have been expecting to. It just has that kind of vibe to it that just allows you to know that what you're experiencing is something very different than what you may have been anticipating as far as off this kind of bass. The cover art has you kind of thinking this is going to be a bit of an aggressive kind of finishing, polished kind of album, and you can tell that there's really a lot of that double bass action throughout the initial songs. And with Ego in particular, you definitely get that kind of death metal variety very much from the start, getting the pulsing power going to where you really can know more or less what we're actually seeing going forward and being able to experience. It's just very much helpful for us being able to know just that going forward. You have this kind of energy that's carried throughout the album. Now we do see this where certain songs do find themselves a little bit out of place, and if you will, and it's not so much because they're out of place, it's more just because you get a variety with this band because they are melodic. In a lot of ways, when listening to this album, I found myself trying to figure out who they actually compare to as far as for your band for you to listen to, and really several bands came to mind. One of which came to mind was Demon Hunter, and the reason why is because they have a lot of these just aggressive death metal parts without really true speed metal behind it, or really even true just over the top amazing guitar play, but they're still having really good double bass action and really good variety as far as their vocal division is. You're going to see on many of these tracks this dual kind of vocals of a dirtier, of a graspy, growling vocal, and then just the more, you have like the yow, and then you have the and they're kind of like dueling it out on there at the same time, saying the same exact lines, very much in a kind of more darker, kind of demonic kind of version of what you would see Alice in Chains from the album Dirt onward, where you see in more and more of those songs, especially Jar of Flies and Alice in Chains' self-titled album that came out in '95. The situation where every single track was Lane Staley singing alongside Jerry Cantrell. in every single one of those tracks, and you kind of get this feeling in a lot of those songs of with a much more darker and stranger variety. Now, the weird thing about this album, though, is that you do have that consistent feel throughout the entire record, but there's a lot of tracks on here that have these very anthemic attempted appeals as far as that goes, where you just feel like the album's trying to be anthemic in their themes, in how they sound, where they're trying to give you that kind of battle cry kind of speech, so to speak. We're getting ready to check out the song Finding X, which is actually a music video clip by their record company Massacre Records, which you'll see what I'm talking about as far as this kind of anthemic, kind of battle cry chant. Let's pull this up real fast. And you can kind of see that right from the get-go right there, that this band really has this kind of anthemic kind of appeal, where they're trying to really, to give this kind of battle cry kind of spiel. And you feel that very much so in Finding X. And to be honest with you, when I listened to Finding X first, Finding X really... when I listened to this song first out of the album, because it was a music video and I was trying to find a page to listen to the whole entire album and get the way I can be able to listen through it like I would normally do so. And man, when I was looking into Finding X, I just, because of that kind of battle cry kind of feel, but it being a death metal kind of thing, it just really didn't feel like it fit at first. I liked the opening riffs of the song, and it really just had me captivated and really moved and kind of getting that kind of almost nu metal kind of Mudvayne-esque groove on there. But then all of a sudden, it really just started feeling weird with the kind of almost forced battle cry feel. But as I listened to it in the actual album space, it felt a lot more natural. It felt a lot more, like something that actually needed to be there. And I liked it a lot more going forward. And so if you want that kind of like just never give up, never give in, never resign, that kind of feel, man, that's some good stuff to really get your kind of groove onto. And that's really what we found with that song Finding X going forward on this one. The album itself is not a very an atrociously long album. The longest track on here is gonna be 5 minutes and 40 seconds. But I will tell you that's like with most metal bands and metal albums, the best songs usually tend to be the longer ones. And as far as on this album, at least, one of my favorite tracks on this album, and one that I definitely want to listen to and keep listening to, it was Strange. It was 5 minutes and 38 seconds. And really, what's strange about it is that this is one of the few songs in the album that takes a very vastly different approach than the rest of the album, and in many ways shows them genre hopping right in the middle of an album. Which I'll be frank with you, if you listen to this entire album, you're going to find that very frequently with this band, that they do genre hop frequently in this album. You're gonna feel some new metal, In Flames 2005 elements in there. You're gonna feel some, a lot of just natural death metal things where you're gonna listen to it thinking that you're listening to a newer recording of the band Death, or even something that Children of Bodom may have put out if Alexi Laiho was drunk one night and just didn't, just decided to lay off the screaming too much. And the keyboardist didn't show up for the entire session. But that's kind of what we're seeing as far as that kind of feel. There's a lot of songs that are like that, and the majority album feels like that. But there are certain songs that make me think more of Demon Hunter, and the reason why is because of the anthemic cries and attempts to actually show a different style of vocals. I'm getting ready to show you a transition point in the song Crashing Beyond the Horizon, which really has that kind of pull that I know.
Guide my path as I'm crashing beyond the horizon. No way, less than home. Let's hold hands as we're crashing behind the horizon.
Well, hold up now. That's not quite metal. That's not quite what you would think of as far as a death metal band all of a sudden trying to sound like you're some drunk Scottish guy on the edge of a pier dunching around. And you kind of get that kind of feel with this album, where they take that kind of approach in Crashing Beyond the Horizon, but it works though. It definitely it gives you kind of a different, relaxed type of appeal, and shows something to me that I kind of like, which is I like seeing a death metal band be able to transition, be able to have that kind of change, be able to give you something different as far as on appeal. You know, when bands like Opeth released their album Damnation, and it was a different approach where it was less of the another giant Saiyan. And, you know, it was more of Michael Eckerfield being able to unleash his beautiful voice, which he has a godly beautiful voice. This guy does not have quite that kind of voice, but he definitely still has an interesting taste as being able to give you something different. And I do like when different is showcased in an album. That's why Crashing Beyond the Horizon is, in my opinion, my favorite song off this record so far, with the only possible transition being the song Kyrie Hellison, which has that really just hard, just riffing speed throughout the most of it, with a lot of still the anthemic kind of battle cry chants over and over again in there, almost as if they're trying to make Viking metal while at the same time making their metal. So it's a little bit strange as we'll see, but it does have that kind of interesting appeal as far as I'm concerned. But to each his own as far as I'm concerned when that goes. It's been an interesting album experience, and one that I actually enjoyed replaying. This last track, though, is one that where Crashing Beyond the Horizon had that kind of departure from the death metal tune toward the end of the song. This one actually is a complete departure from the hard death metal variety in this exact track, and almost feels more like it would belong on a progressive album, almost like something that you would hear in a Queensryche album or even a Dream Theater album, not because of it being melodic or any type of thing, as far as just having an amazingly unworldly, godlike voice, because it has a bit of a poetic stance. You know, bands like Chevelle and Tool will have, poetry spots in certain songs, especially Chevelle in their Wonder What's Next album. But this is kind of a little bit of a different feel that you get, as this kind of is a song of a poetry in many ways, of a guy, dealing with whatever he's dealing with in life. And it's a little different. Let's take a look at this track, and you'll hear what I'm talking about. It's called Purple Clouds, second to last track on the album.
1 o'clock, June 1st, 2012. I swear to God, now there's no one left I could trust or could be trusted by. I put my life on rest.
But yeah, that's essentially what you see as far as Purple Clouds. Purple Clouds has that kind of just slow-based, I'm unleashing my emotions, I'm letting you know what I feel, I can hear it, kind of a feel going on, and it's really got that kind of interesting vibe. A lot of times when a band takes a different approach mid-album, now granted, I'll be frank with you, as far as I am, I prefer clean vocals over growling vocals. I really do. I say that, but I still love Children of Bodom. I still really love Children of Bodom. I still enjoy Demon Hunter. I still really enjoy Death. And it's just one of those that it just has to work together with an album. To be honest with you, this band's clean vocals don't work with the band itself as much as their dirty death growl vocals do. And in my personal opinion, I think they should stick to more of that going forward. Although this song, Purple Clouds, will probably end up being their most radio-friendly song that they have on this album, outside of maybe just someone picking up Crashing Beyond the Horizon or Kyrie Hellison and just listening for some riff speed up in there a little bit. But Purple Clouds will probably end up being the one that gets the most radio-esque play as far as that goes. But it's not good in this situation, because it is a poor representation of what the album stands for and what the album is, as far as it being in symmetry with the rest of the other songs. That being the case, though, I think it's a great song. It's just one that doesn't really fit with the rest of the album as a whole. Crashing Beyond the Horizon does fit with it, and because of if Crashing Beyond the Horizon was the only one that had this kind of vocals in there, that kind of stripped down singing vocals in there, and it would be a lot more impactful rather than being the fact that there's another song that actually has a similar type of effect. That's more of a slow jam, poetry kind of spiel, rather than a hard rock song, a hard rock heavy metal song with death metal appeal. That's ending with that type of lyricism and experimentation toward the end of it. We see this being kind of the real different spot in the kind of album in itself as a whole. The album really does have a very solid, death metal appearance to it, but it has like I said, genre bending, like that go along with Purple Clouds, that go along with Crash and Beyond, that even go along with Finding X. As Finding X, like I said, it can at times feel like something that you would hear on a stripped down Slipknot kind of album if you really wanted to, or something that you would hear from Demon Hunter, which could kind of, like I said, just feel a little bit awkward or different. It's not necessarily bad, it's just different. And when it comes down to it, guys, what we want to do is finish off our tally sheet for it. So what after all of these listens, and really kind of learning about how the album feels, how do I really feel how do we really feel we should score this album as far as it goes? Final thoughts before I go into this. I really did actually enjoy listening to this album, and I've already actually gotten it from my actual personal iTunes collection. Really had fun, digging into the tracks and really just putting it on for some background noise when I went out Pokemon hunting at Pokemon Go recently, and it was really fun to just have that kind of on in here. And then crashing beyond the horizon. But it's one of those that you definitely got to be in the mood for some death metal, like I am when I want to listen to Death or when I want to listen to Children of Bodom. You got to be in the mood for that kind of grindy type of feel that you're going to get with the extreme double bass pedal abuse. As far as on this actual album, we go over to here. We have our 10 categories, as you see. Let's start off with the production value. Production value, there's nothing that I can dock for on this section, because the production value is crisp, it's clean. Never really felt like there was anything on the album that felt really flat or felt like it was unintentionally fell. So therefore, on the production, I have to give it a 10 out of 10. When it comes to the artwork, I think the artwork definitely describes the album in a very positive way. The album artwork itself does not detract from the actual viewing experience of the album or listening experience of the album, and in no way does the album artwork not make me want to pick up the album. In fact, the album artwork made me actually want to pick this album just because of the album artwork. That being the case, I want to give it a 9 out of 10 right there. As far as songwriting, we see a very diverse array of songwriting present in this album. One that just really, even though for being a death metal album, where so often with death metal you see a very just repetitive abuse of the double bass pedals with the occasional different song here or there, different appeal, different pace or whatnot. And being a band that doesn't have a keyboard player, it really can become a little bit interesting as far as that goes with what your songwriting capabilities can be. They still managed to pull it off, and I think made a very solid effort on there. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 right there. As far as pacing, how does the album play out? When I'm listening to the album, am I halfway through getting pissed off and just like, okay, I can't do this anymore? Is it too long? Do I feel like it's not really giving me the efforts? No, I feel like the album was paced very well. I felt like the album, had its low points and high points in a good sequential that really just didn't put you in a spot that you actually wanted to turn the album off. I thought it was very solid because of that. Going to give it a 9 out of 10 right there. As far as standout tracks in this album are definitely going to be like I said, Ego and Finding X. Finding X already has a music video for it, by the way. But Ego definitely has that really aggressive front-running song that opens the tracks up. Purple Clouds will probably be the most memorable song on this record, and probably the one that people will talk about the most going forward, as well as the track behind it, Tranquilize, which I didn't get a chance to really go over. But overall, though, the rest of the album kind of does blend together a little bit with that traditional death metal feel. Therefore, I'm going to give this right here a 7 out of 10. As far as cohesion is really where this album gets really hit a little bit hard. It's not very cohesive as far as I'm concerned in comparison to being a perfection of cohesion. It really has a lot of spots in there where, like I said, Crashing Beyond, Thankfully, they end Crashing Beyond in a way where you are paced and set up for a fresh start in Kyrie Hellison. Finding X with their battle cries frequently going on really just kind of takes away and kind of beats you up a little bit going into oscillating. And when Purple Clouds comes on, you're kind of surprised by it and definitely shocked. It's one of those that, if you're just listening through the album, you'll hear, and then all of a sudden you hear the genre bending moments, and they stick out very hard when they genre bend. For cohesion, I have to give it a 5 out of 10. For replayability, this was no task at all for me to replay this album. It was very fun for me to keep going with. Certain songs I will keep listening to and pushing back and going, yes, I want to hear this again. And as far as that goes, I'm going to have to give it an 8 out of 10. As far as my personal preference, do I actually like this type of music? Yes, I do. I do like this type of stuff. It's not my personal 100% favorite of metal, but it is definitely one that I do enjoy going forward. So I have to give it right here a 7 out of 10 stars as far as that goes. Suitability. As far as suitability goes, does this band have a lot of other bands that would actually feel like it would be able to play against on tour? Do you feel like this is an album that would be able to match up with other albums and be able to cohesively work together with other albums, or is this a collection of songs that can't ever be played together, be played in the mix of some type of genius mix by iTunes or by any kind of radio mix? Is this an album that has to be played as a whole, or can individual songs compete on its own and be able to be a part of some giant iTunes playlist? And I would say yes, it is. It definitely has that kind of suitability where it's definitely paced in a certain way where you can do that. You're not going to have any of the kind of problems right there. They could definitely go up and be in a mix of Death, in a mix of Children of Bodom, and be even in a mix of some hard rock heavy metal channels, such as maybe even like an Edge Radio, simply because of what they have available to you on certain tracks. Definitely going to give it a 9 out of 10 right there. As far as mastery, the double bass pedal gets very much abused right here. The dual vocals I really liked and thought that was a very nice touch with a lot of what they were doing in a lot of the albums, where you do have the dual dirty vocals, as I like to call it, where you have the growl and you have the prowl, as far as that's concerned, is what you're hearing. I really enjoyed the drum work on this album. Very solid double bass pedal work. But the real lacking area of this album is just that their guitar work. It was good and it worked with the songs, but there weren't really any true hard riff solos that really had me really getting it. What you do see a lot of in death metal, where you are going to see, especially in melodic death metal sort of varieties, very good solo work. For that, I have to give this album a 7 out of 10. Overall, though, I like the album, as you can see from the scoring process that we had. We definitely enjoyed what we were listening to and what we were seeing and hearing. As far as that works out, guys, I hope that you guys were enjoying this album, because on an overall scale, it really was fun to listen to. It wasn't one that really felt like work to review. And yes, there are weak points about the album, but unless you're making the absolute perfect Slayer album or whatnot, or even a Megadeth album, there's definitely going to be parts in it that are a little on the lacking side, as you would expect with nearly any album. Overall, our total for this album, as far as actual total score, ends up being a 78 out of 100, meaning that it is going to be a C+ record, and one that you should definitely check out and really enjoy. That's been all for us here at Warheart TV for this episode of our review sessions for the review for Lost Dreams Exhale album. I hope that you've really enjoyed this review. Give them a listen, check the links in the description, and I hope that you guys learned something today about a new band and enjoy the album going forward. That being said, Warriors, keep stealing the kneecaps.